Well, I want to welcome all of you today. We have a very special program and a very special guest. Her name is Becky Morris, and she's from Elgin, Illinois. And so, Becky, so good to have you on our program today.
Thank you.
And our topic today, it's on sex trafficking. And we've been hearing more and more about the growing concern about sex trafficking in our world and in a lot of nations. And Becky is most concerned about the sex trafficking that is going on in the country of India. And so, to start us off, Becky, how would we define just what exactly is sex trafficking?
Well, sex trafficking falls under the umbrella of human trafficking. And the easiest way to understand that is human trafficking is slavery. It's modern day slavery. So it's anyone who is being forced, coerced, and exploited for the profit of someone else. So under that, we've got labor trafficking and then sex trafficking. Sex trafficking accounts for about 70% of all slavery in the world today. So it's obviously the hugest market that we have. And that's anyone who is forced into the sex trade. It could be a minor, it could be someone over 18, but it is someone who is forced into this without it's not their will to be there.
It's not their consent.
Right.
And so they're forced. So that means that what is happening here, what are the different ways that these sex traffickers are doing this to get somebody, for instance, a girl to be forced to do this against her will?
Lots of different ways. So it depends on what country you're looking at. It depends on the situation. The largest cause of sex trafficking worldwide is poverty. And that's because poverty makes us desperate, and desperate makes us vulnerable. So if we're desperate and we don't have the money, we're vulnerable to people who are going to lie to us and say, I could get you a job, or I can get you married, or whatever. I can help you in some way if you come with me. And so a lot of times it's people who are just really in a desperate situation looking for some help, and they fall prey to these traffickers. There are also cases where they're just kidnapped right off the street. Here in the United States, it's mostly runaways. Runaway teens around the age of 12 to 14 are the most targeted. And that's because, again, they're vulnerable. You know, they're on the streets by themselves, and now someone has said, oh, I can help you. And so they end up going and being sold to a pimp or a brothel.
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with, well, security and being provided for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, like you say, that poverty does put people in a desperate situation, and people are sometimes willing to do things that they otherwise wouldn't under other circumstances. Mm-hmm. But like you say, in some cases they might be kidnapped. Mm-hmm. Well, now, you are involved with this, and you are involved in an organization called Freedom Firm.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And you are most concerned about girls in India.
Right.
Okay, so now, how did you get involved with all of this? How did you get a passion for being involved with helping girls to get out of sex trafficking situations?
Well, I have 2 adopted nieces from India, and so obviously I love them to death. And so I just felt God kind of calling me to work with girls who were at risk in India. I didn't really know what that would mean or what that would look like. But girls at risk, because I knew that my nieces, had they not been dropped off at the orphanage, would have been girls at risk. I don't know what their family situation was, but I know it wasn't good. And so they would have been at risk. So anyway, interesting things that God does, led me to a presentation by Freedom Firm's founders. I met them and learned a little bit about human trafficking. And I learned that while there's probably over 30 million slaves in the world, and there's probably 2 million child sex slaves in the world, so that's anyone under 18, that a quarter of them, that's like 500,000, are in India. And so when I started to realize that these girls on the street in India are unbelievably vulnerable to this, I realized that that could have been my nieces very easily. And so I thought, I have to do something. I have to do something to help them.
And how old were your nieces when they were adopted?
They were both about 2 years old when they were adopted.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's like in our lives we try to look through the eyes of Jesus. And then as you look at the eyes of your nieces, that it's like Jesus is opening up your eyes to this big problem, needing people who are willing to go, willing to help, because this obviously, you're talking about, you say 500,000 girls in India.
In India alone.
Are involved with this, just in India. And you think of India as being one of the more populated countries in the world, and I know there's lots of poverty there as well, so I can just see where this country would be just a haven for this.
Right.
Yeah, so Freedom Firm, what exactly where are they based?
Well, they're based in India, so I work here on the U.S. side just to represent them and fundraise over here. But they're all based in India, so we have about 25 staff over there. We work mostly in the southern part of the country, but we're expanding now a little bit, and we have gone up a little bit north to Allahabad. But our main offices are in Uti and Pune, and we have another one in Nagpur and a workshop in Calcutta.
And so what exactly is their work then in India?
So our mission is to eradicate sex trafficking in India, period. And we do that through three main points to our mission, which is rescue, restoration, and justice. So I'll just go through each point quickly for you. The rescue part is we have our undercover investigators going into the brothels, specifically looking for minor girls that they think are very young. And once we've found them, they have undercover cameras on in order to take evidence. We go to the police and ask them to cooperate and do a raid with us. So we always go along on the raid to make sure that things are done properly and that the girls are treated as victims. But that's the rescue part. We're there for that day.
So that almost sounds like it'd be some real dangerous work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And they're probably risking their lives as they go in there.
Absolutely. If they're found out, actually we had 2 investigators found out last year. The pimps and the brothel keepers kind of work as picture it like a mob. And so they are very well connected. And so once they kind of figured out that our guys were undercover investigators, the mob actually came and attacked them. One of our guys was able to get away and get to the police. The other one was actually taken to a building and put in a room and beaten up for information for quite a while until the police got there. And he is still working for us as an undercover investigator. That's how committed he is. But it's definitely dangerous work. Yeah.
Yes. So we can appreciate their efforts and their sacrifice.
Yeah.
And they're willing to put their lives on the line for the sake of so many other people to hopefully bring release and freedom to them. And so that's the first step then, is going in and as an undercover unit to be able to find out where this is happening, who's in charge, and then to be able to then get the Indian police involved with this. And so they work pretty well then. Are there pretty strict laws in India against this whole prostitution and sex trafficking? The country takes this pretty seriously then.
Well, the laws are pretty good. It's the lack of law enforcement that is the problem. So the laws are pretty good. It's actually illegal for a minor to be in prostitution, and it's illegal to have a building full of prostitutes, which would be a brothel. So in other words, it's okay to do it on your own, but not for a brothel keeper to be managing this. However, it's not enforced. So what we do is kind of gather that information so that when we go to the police, we can say, hey, we have this information. We need you to come and now enforce the law. So a big part of our job is to kind of make relationships with the police department and find those people that will cooperate with us and help us.
So in other words, if it wasn't for an organization like Freedom Firm, maybe there wouldn't be a whole lot of proactive work by the police to be able to try to eradicate this.
In most cases, I would say yes, that's true. There are some police who obviously deeply care about this and might be out there doing it, but in most cases, it's going to take an organization like Freedom Firm getting involved. Yeah.
To get involved, do the investigative work, and then work with the police to say that we have a strong case that this is going on here.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it's good that they are at least working and cooperating then.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, makes your work a lot easier then.
Yeah, and we've made a lot of progress. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then the second key, so that's one thing that Freedom Firm does is that they are actively working to expose or find out and expose and arrest the people who are doing this.
Right.
The pimps and
The brothel keepers.
Brothel keepers. Okay, well then, what would be the next phase, or what's another pillar of this organization then?
So the second pillar is restoration, and that's the long-term part of what we do. There's no quick fix to this. And so the restoration program is really our attempt to walk beside these girls and help them in any way that we can to get back on their feet, to heal, and to be able to function in society again. So we facilitate medical care. 70% of our girls are HIV positive. They need a lot of medical care. We facilitate their counseling, education, job skills training, housing, all of the things that they need just to be able to survive, but also to take care of themselves long term. So we have several parts to that. We have something called Leg Up. We do horse therapy with the girls, where they learn skills and responsibility to care for these horses, but then also are able to facilitate the therapy for disabled children that come. And that, we've just seen that give a huge amount of worth to these girls and purpose. Look at me, I mean something to these children, I'm helping them, and I'm worthy here. We have avalanche camps that we do, where churches from the U.S. can actually go over and facilitate camps for rescued girls, where they go out into creation and can kind of get away from things. They're challenged, they have to do things like rappelling and cliff jumping and all these fun things and long hikes that are challenging, and they learn confidence and they learn, wow, I can do this. And it's also just an interesting place for them to be able to hear from God, to kind of get away from everything and be out in creation, just like we do when we go to camp here. We send our kids kind of for that same reason. And then the largest part of our restoration program is called Ruhama Designs, and that's it's actually a for-profit micro-enterprise that Freedom Firm created, and rescued girls can go and work for us. They get a fair salary paid to them each month, and they produce beautiful handmade jewelry that we then promote over here in the U.S., and they get a fair wage, and it's a really great way for them to become independent and be able to take care of themselves.
So that second phase really is a very important one, because they got into this originally because they were poor and desperate, and so it's one thing
in most cases.
Yeah, and so but if you're going to rescue them from from this whole bondage, then it's like they have to be exposed to a new life, that there's opportunities, and it sounds like that's a lot of what is happening here. Is there any certain length of time that it takes for them to be restored, or
I wish I could give you a number, but it's different for everybody. We've been doing it long enough now that we're starting to see, sometimes these girls are with us for a little while and then they make some bad choices, or they go back to something that we wish they wouldn't, or they marry a guy who maybe isn't a great match and we wish they wouldn't. But we've been doing it long enough now that we're actually seeing some of those girls come back. And so we're seeing them kind of go off, they make some maybe not so great choices, but now they when things fall apart, it's Freedom Firm that they remember, that we were stable, that we were loving, and that maybe what we were saying was true, And so we're seeing them come back and ask for a job, or ask for some help, or can you help me raise my child, that kind of thing. So it's a very long-term focus. And if we were to just look at the short term, it would be very discouraging. But when you look at it long-term, these girls really are finding hope. It just their journey might not look exactly like we want it to,
Yeah, and so you're even saying there's opportunities for churches that, a lot of churches are looking for opportunities to go on mission trips.
Right.
And so when you look at, this subject of sex trafficking, it's certainly got its mission and its ministry that has its focus. And so that's encouraged then to work with Freedom Firm, that's the organization,
right,
to be able to connect with them and arrange for some kind of a mission trip to be able to help in what is such a very important ministry today.
Yeah, that's definitely one option. Those avalanche camps are a great way for churches to get involved. There's a lot of obviously interviewing and things. We want to make sure we have the right people going over to work with the girls, and that everyone is prepared for what they're going to witness and come up against and things like that. So, but that's one great way. There's lots of great ways to get involved here in the U.S. too, even for things that are happening over in India and places like that. But
yeah, because you are working here in the United States for Freedom Firm, that's really based in India, And so it's like they've really expanded their network then of their ministry and their support. Are they, where all have they branched out? I mean, obviously in the United States, but are there other countries where they've kind of established a relationship or a presence? Yeah.
Well, right now we're pretty small. We're still pretty small organizations. We've got about 25 to 30 staff in India, and we only have 4 of us here in the United States, and only 1 is full-time right now. So it's pretty small, but our job here in the U.S. is to do this, to educate people on human trafficking, what is going on in the world, what can you do about it, and then also to raise funds, obviously. I wish what we did in India was free, but it's not. So, we have fundraisers and events and things like that. And also to promote the jewelry. That's one way that we raise funds.
Yeah, so that's a big part of this is needing, everything takes, finances to fuel the ministry.
Yeah.
And when you look at taking, having people hired who are going to be able to go in and do rescues, but then also that the longevity of the restoration,
Yeah.
that all costs money then.
Right.
And so if there are any people who would be willing to get involved with this, to support Freedom Firm, that we will have the information then up on the, up here for people to be able to look at how they can get connected with it then.
Yeah, that would be great.
Are there any other ways to get, as far as connectedness?
Absolutely.
The website and-
Yeah. You can check out on our website, there's a Get Involved tab that you can look at specifically. But one of the main ways is, especially for women, this is obviously an issue that affects women deeply often, you can have jewelry parties. So the jewelry that these girls make is absolutely beautiful. It's very affordable. And so we encourage people to sign up for a jewelry party in your area. You could have it in your home, you could have it at your church. You could even just ask your pastor, could I set up a booth, like a little table of this jewelry and information after a service? Something like that. We also have a documentary called Horse and Rider that actually follows the story of 2 of our girls, Asha and Mangala. And you can see what happens after rescue. What does that look like? You can watch them making the jewelry and things like that, even the horse therapy. So we encourage people, if your church is kind of interested in this topic and wanting to learn more, you can host a screening there, host a screening of it, have the jewelry out, those types of things. So there's lots of ways that you can help us raise awareness, as well as some funds that would help us, in the long term. And on the website too, you'll see our 10 for 12 campaign. We're asking people to just consider giving $10 a month for 12 months. $10 a month is basically the cost of a movie ticket. And just if you would do that, we need more of a sustainer, so that we can budget ahead of time and just know that we have some stable income coming.
Well, this sounds like a good way to partner and get involved. Because a lot of times, we hear about stuff on the news like sex trafficking, and a lot of times we just think, well, we may feel powerless over this.
Right.
And to say, what can I do? And we just feel like, well, there's really nothing that we can do. But then as we hear you speak, to say, well, there's something that we can do, and that we can support this. Like you say, with the jewelry party, giving a donation, maybe going on a mission trip over there. It just sounds like there's a lot of opportunity where how people can get involved directly or indirectly to support what is really a very critical ministry and cause right now.
Yeah, it can seem overwhelming, and I think sometimes we can become paralyzed when we get overwhelmed. But the truth is, I'm just one person. I'm just doing my one little thing here to be a part of it. But the reality is, if each person does just a little bit, it is a beast that can come down, and we really believe that. We believe that we can see sex trafficking end in our lifetime. We believe we can see modern day slavery over, but it's going to take people willing to get involved and not just hearing about it, but then actually taking a step forward. And for you, that might be a jewelry party. It might be reading a book about sex trafficking, or watching a documentary or something like that, or it might be more than that. It just kind of depends on the path that God leads you down. But for me, it was just sort of taking one step forward, like, well, I guess I'll look into it and see, and then here I am now. So it's just a matter of taking that one next step, whatever that is for you.
I remember once speaking at a women's conference, and then after I was done speaking, then they were talking about other issues, and one was sex trafficking, and I didn't say anything, but in the back of my mind I was thinking, really? What are we doing? Is this really a problem in our communities? Is this really but yet they were insistent upon this. And ever since that day, I've been just learning more and more about this, that this is a major issue in our world, in our country, in our communities, that nobody is immune to this. I mean, everybody, there's a vulnerability in every community, and so we have to be aware of, just what is going on. When I just think of like pornography that's on the internet, just as an example, that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It takes in more money than the 3 major television networks annually. And so obviously it just shows that, just how huge this is. I mean, this is an epidemic problem that's now throughout the world.
And many people don't realize, since we're talking about pornography, that many of the girls that you find involved in pornography or strip clubs are trafficked, that they are not there of their own free will, that they cannot leave, they are being threatened, they are being harmed. And so it's often kind of looked at, I think, as, oh, these people want to do this, or somehow this is, they're volunteering for this, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So.
Yeah, this is where that's happening against their will. Well, now there's a third pillar to Freedom Firm's ministry, and what would that be? So
the third one is justice. And this is the part that I think sometimes people want to skip by because it's the lawyers and stuff like that. But it's actually so important, and this is one of the main reasons I chose to work with Freedom Firm, is the holistic approach, because justice is the prevention side of what we do. There's a lot of ways to go about trying to prevent sex trafficking. Our founder, our co-founder, and I just firmly believe in what he says, believes that this is really the best way. So what happens is we go and we arrest the brothel keepers and the traffickers, and then our work is to try and get them convicted and hold them accountable, which is almost impossible in India to do. So we've received 9 convictions since we started in 2006, which doesn't seem like a lot here in the U.S., but it's an incredible victory over there. It's a miracle of God, really, those 9 convictions. And what those do is those convictions send a message. Not only are we stopping that brothel keeper, but it sends a message to all the brothel keepers in that area to say, if you do this, if you take in minors, if you are trafficking minor girls, we will come after you and you will pay a hefty price for that. And that is what ends up stopping the other brothel keepers from doing this. The demand will always be there. But if we start to take money out of their pockets, then they will stop doing what is costing them their lives, their freedom, their money. And so the justice side gets me really amped up, because to me, that's how we're actually going to see this end, is when we hold these people accountable.
Well, that's where there's just so much evil in our world, is because there's injustice. Right. There just isn't that support or that backing that we need, and that really comes with legislating fair laws, laws that protect.
Right.
And so that's the legal end of it then. And so is that all then, is that part of working with the legal system then, or is that also where you need to support the work of lawyers to do this?
We work within the legal system there. We work with the public prosecutors. Our lawyers on staff can't actually practice over there, so it's the public prosecutor that does it. So we work a lot with the rescued girls as far as prepping them to give their testimony, so they can testify and things like that, as well as just helping the public prosecutor with whatever they need, so that we can get the proper documentation and information. A trial over there could take, it could take 3 to 5 years before it even goes to trial. So where is the brothel keeper at that point? Where is our rescued girl? It takes a lot in order to get everybody back to where they need to be. So.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been just so helpful, because as people are watching this today, that there are ways to get involved, and Freedom Firm is one of those very good ways, that people can get involved in to tie in with their ministry, and then to be able to make a difference. And so I'm so impressed by you. So as you were looking at your nieces from India, then obviously you got concerned about this whole issue of sex trafficking over there. That's really a major problem. You're looking at 500,000 women.
Yeah.
But how did you get connected with Freedom Firm? Did you just kind of Google it one day, or how?
No, that was a God thing. So I knew I wanted to help girls in India. So I told my friend, that, hey, I think I want to do this one day. I don't know what that means, but isn't that cool? And that very day, her husband received an email about a presentation from Freedom Firm. And so she said, hey, I don't know what it is. I think it has to do with girls in India. I just thought I'd tell you. And I actually had plans to go do something else that night, a different justice issue. And but I just thought, this is too coincidental. This is like God telling me to go to this. And so I just randomly showed up at their presentation and heard from them, heard their mission, talked with Mala, our co-founder, a little bit, and ended up doing this for the job. So 4 years ago.
And so you say there are 4 that are working here in the United States. Are they all in the same area as you, or are they in different parts of the country?
Yeah, no, I'm in the Chicagoland area in Elgin, and then we have a rep like me in Texas, and we have our executive director and our jewelry specialist in Denver area.
Okay.
So we're spread out a little bit.
And so you are doing all that you can to raise public awareness about, well, the issue, the problem of sex trafficking, but then also the good work that Freedom Firm is doing, and they sell the jewelry, and then you go out and like speak on this subject then?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are in one of those general areas and would like someone to come and give a presentation or do an event for you, you can always let us know through the website and contact us, and we'd be happy to talk with you. So, and jewelry parties can be done anywhere because we're able to ship everything you need, and can be done in your home or your church, you know, that kind of thing. So that's the great thing. It's very independent.
Yeah. Well, Becky, you're such a blessing. It's so good to have you here with us today. And when I consider somebody who is willing to, you know, really go into the trenches, carrying the cross for the sake of so many people, you know, to try to rescue and to help. And of course, that's the mission of our Lord Jesus Christ, who died on a cross for us, is to give us freedom and life. And so, you know, that's what this whole organization is working to do, is to bring freedom and life to so many girls who are in bondage right now. And so just so thankful that you are willing to carry that cross, and hopefully there's going to be more and more people who are going to be joining you in this effort and to be working for justice and peace throughout the world. Well, Becky, thank you so much, and God bless you and keep up your good work. And
thank you.
And thank you for joining us this day as well.